Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. I always thought marriage was supposed to be about trust, a foundation built over years. Sarah and I had been together for 15 years, and for most of those years, we had a good life, or so I thought. We had our routines, our weekend traditions, and our kids, who were the heart of it all. To the outside world, we were the perfect family, the sort of image people admired. Life, though, has a way of kicking you when you're comfortable. About 6 months ago, little things started gnawing at me. Sarah became distant, distracted, her phone a constant companion as she laughed at her screen or disappeared into long silences, claiming work or yoga sessions with friends. These weren't just ordinary nights, they were late and became frequent, each one chipping away at my peace of mind. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off with ease, saying I was being paranoid. "Ben, it's just work. Marketing's demanding," she'd laugh, her eyes too focused, like she was daring me to question more. But the nagging feeling grew stronger each day, a voice in the back of my mind whispering that something wasn't right. I chalked it up to stress from work and parenthood, burying my suspicions under the weight of trust. One morning, though, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Sarah left her phone on the kitchen counter as she went upstairs for a shower. I told myself it was just a quick glance, something innocent to ease my anxiety. But the minute I reached for it, a message flashed across the screen: "Last night was incredible, can't wait for more." I froze, staring at those words. My stomach twisted, an icy feeling spreading through my chest. A storm of disbelief, anger, and betrayal hit me all at once. I knew it was wrong, but I unlocked her phone. My fingers trembled as I scrolled, reading message after message between her and a man named Mitch. Their words painted a clear picture of everything I'd feared: plans, inside jokes, late-night meetups. Each message chipped away at the life I thought we had. Mitch wasn't just a fling, he was part of Sarah's life in ways that I should have been. I put the phone down and leaned against the counter, my head spinning. In that moment, I felt like everything I knew had shattered. Our laughter, our memories, our kids, it all felt hollow, like some carefully crafted lie she'd woven around me. I didn't confront her that morning. Instead, I went through the motions, pretending everything was fine. But my mind was on fire. I kept replaying all the times she'd told me she was out with friends or had a late night at work. They were like puzzle pieces that I could now see had never really fit together. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. But I knew I had to stay calm, to bide my time and find a way to make her feel even a fraction of the betrayal I felt. The next few days were torture. I could barely look at her without feeling sick. Nights became sleepless as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying our conversations, analyzing every lie she'd told. And the kids, blissfully unaware, were the hardest part. I kept wondering what this would do to them, whether they'd see the cracks in the family they believed was perfect. One evening, as I helped the kids with their homework, Sarah walked in, her face lit up with a smile that now felt painfully false. "What's for dinner?" she asked, as if everything was as it had always been. I played along, responding like nothing had changed, but inside, I was barely holding myself together. Finally, I knew I had to act. If she could betray me this easily, there was no point in protecting her, in sparing her from the consequences of her lies. I decided to take control. I started quietly moving money out of our joint account, ensuring the savings I'd built stayed with me. Sarah always left the financial management to me, trusting that I'd keep everything running smoothly. It was a trust she clearly didn't deserve anymore, and I wasn't going to let her take advantage of it any longer. After securing the financial side, I planned a confrontation. It would be at a family dinner she'd organized with her parents. She wanted us to announce our big family trip for the holidays, a trip that, until now, had been the one thing keeping our family routine intact. But in my mind, it would become the stage where the truth would be exposed. The days leading up to the dinner were filled with tension, though Sarah seemed oblivious. I barely spoke to her, sticking to polite answers whenever she tried to make conversation. Every time she laughed or touched my arm, my mind raced back to those messages, the life she'd hidden from me. It was almost enough to break me, but I held on to the thought of the dinner, the moment I'd reveal her betrayal to her family, the people she respected most. The night arrived, and Sarah was all smiles, dressed in the sweater I'd bought her for her birthday, looking every bit the loving wife and mother. I went through the motions, acting like I was right there with her, even as anger churned inside me. Her parents welcomed us warmly, her mother pulling the kids into a tight hug as they walked through the door. As we settled around the dinner table, I felt a strange calm wash over me. Sarah took a deep breath, leaning forward to start talking about the trip, her face glowing with excitement. I let her talk, listening as she painted a perfect picture of our family's future, her words a painful reminder of what we'd lost. Then, when she paused to smile at me, expecting my support, I saw my opening. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "before we talk about that, there's something I need to share." Her smile faltered, her eyes narrowing slightly as I turned to her parents. I felt their gaze on me, waiting, curious. "Sarah," I continued, turning back to her, "do you want to tell them about Mitch? Or should I?" The color drained from Sarah's face as my words hung in the air. Her parents looked from me to her, confusion and disbelief in their eyes. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. For a moment, I wondered if I'd gone too far, if I'd stepped into territory I couldn't come back from. But then I remembered the messages, the late nights, the lies, and I knew there was no turning back. "What are you talking about, Ben?" she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who's Mitch, honey?" her mother asked, a mix of concern and shock flickering across her face. "Go on, Sarah," I said, keeping my tone steady but cold. "Why don't you tell them?" Sarah looked around the table, her gaze bouncing from her parents to our kids, and finally back to me. She was searching for a way out, some explanation she could twist to her advantage. But there was no escaping the truth. She'd lied too many times, and now she had nowhere to hide. "Ben," she whispered, her voice cracking, "we don't have to do this here. Please." "Oh, I think here is perfect," I replied, my voice calm. "You've spent months lying to me, to everyone. And tonight, you get to tell the truth." Her father shifted uncomfortably, looking between us. "Sarah, what's he talking about?" She took a deep breath, her face a mask of desperation, but she still wasn't willing to tell them everything. It's nothing. Just a misunderstanding," she stammered. "Ben's been under a lot of stress lately, he's just, mistaken." "Mistaken?" I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "Mistaken about the man you've been sneaking around with for months? The one you've been lying about every time you had a work meeting or yoga class? Am I mistaken about that too?" She flinched, looking at the table, her fingers twisting together. I could see the guilt in her eyes, and part of me felt a pang of sadness, the ghost of what we'd once shared. But the anger, betrayal, was stronger. I had given her everything, trusted her with everything, and she had thrown it away without a second thought. Her mother's voice trembled as she reached across the table. "Sarah, is this true? Are you seeing someone else?" Sarah's shoulders sagged as she looked at her mother, her face a mask of exhaustion and regret. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's true." The room fell silent. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth, tears filling her eyes, while her father's face twisted in anger and disappointment. The kids, sensing something was very wrong, watched us with wide eyes, their small hands clutching their forks as if they were anchors. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Sarah continued, finally looking at me, her voice shaky. "I was just lonely. You were always so busy, Ben. It felt like you checked out of our marriage long before I did. I made a mistake. A mistake." I repeated, my voice bitter. You think a few late nights out, a few lies, would be a mistake. But you built a life with him, Sarah. A whole secret life while I took care of the kids, took care of you. And now, because of your mistake, you've destroyed this family. Her parents sat in stunned silence, struggling to process the truth. Her father, a man who had always been a steady presence in our lives, leaned back, his face tight with barely concealed fury. He had always loved Sarah fiercely, and to see her now, admitting her betrayal, was breaking something in him, something fundamental. My anger faded into something quieter, a cold resolve. I had laid it all bare, and now I could finally move forward. I looked at Sarah, the woman who had once been my partner in everything, and realized I barely recognized her anymore. After tonight, I said, my voice steady, we're done, Sarah. I'm filing for divorce. She gasped, her eyes wide with panic. Ben, no, we can work this out. I'll do anything, just, please don't do this to the kids. But I shook my head. This isn't something you can fix with a promise or an apology, Sarah. You made your choice. And now I'm making mine. Her parents looked at me, their faces a mixture of sympathy and sorrow. I felt a surge of regret for putting them through this, but I knew it had been necessary. Sarah had to face the consequences of her actions, and I needed them to understand why our family was about to fall apart. The kids, still too young to grasp the full weight of what had just happened, looked between us, their faces filled with confusion. I hated that they had to witness this, that their innocence had been tainted by the lies Sarah had woven. But I couldn't let them grow up in a home built on deceit. That night, after leaving Sarah with her parents, I took the kids home and put them to bed, my mind racing as I tried to figure out what would come next. I had spent so much of my life building a future with Sarah, but now that future was gone, replaced by a blank slate that felt more like a gaping hole. I sat alone in the living room, the house quiet around me, and let the reality of it all sink in. The life I had known, the family I had worked so hard to create, was gone. I had no idea how I would move forward from this, but I knew one thing, I was done letting Sarah's choices define me. I would pick up the pieces, build something new, something honest. And maybe, one day, I would be able to trust again. The next morning felt surreal. The house was quiet, and I could almost pretend that nothing had changed. I went through the motions of making breakfast for the kids, packing their lunches, even setting aside a cup of coffee for Sarah out of habit. It took a moment for me to remember that she wasn't coming back, not in any way that mattered. As I watched my kids eat their breakfast, laughing over some cartoon they'd watched, I felt a wave of guilt. They didn't deserve any of this. They were the reason I'd held on for so long, enduring Sarah's late nights and her distance, all for the sake of keeping this family together. But I realized now that I'd been holding on to a lie. And the worst part was knowing they'd feel the effects of that lie for a long time. After dropping the kids off at school, I headed to the attorney's office. I'd already made the call the night before, asking for an urgent appointment. I wanted this over with as quickly as possible. There was something liberating, almost therapeutic, about making it official, putting a definitive end to the chapter of my life that Sarah had so recklessly destroyed. The attorney was a calm, middle-aged woman named Susan. She listened carefully as I recounted the details, her face a mix of professional detachment and quiet empathy. She'd heard stories like mine before, I could tell, but she didn't interrupt. When I was done, she nodded thoughtfully, tapping her pen against a legal pad. Ben, I'm sorry you're going through this, she said, her voice soft but direct. But you're taking the right steps. Given the situation, you have a strong case for custody. And since you've handled most of the finances, you'll have control over the assets until the court mandates otherwise. Hearing her say it so plainly was both comforting and jarring. I'd been living in a fog since discovering Sarah's betrayal, but now, with Susan's help, I could see the path forward. I could take back control of my life. Thank you, I managed, surprised at how weak my voice sounded. I just want what's best for the kids. They're my priority. She nodded again, her gaze steady. I'll make sure that's the case. I'll file the paperwork today. You'll want to document any interactions with Sarah going forward, for your own records. If she contests custody, we may need all the information we can get. I thanked her and left her office feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. This was real now. The life I'd known was over, and all I could do was pick up the pieces and try to build something new. Back at the house, I looked around, feeling a pang of loneliness. Memories filled every corner, Sarah laughing with the kids on the couch, quiet Sunday mornings sipping coffee together in the kitchen, family dinners where everything felt right. But each memory was tainted now, shadowed by her betrayal. That evening, Sarah called. She'd spent the day with her parents, and her voice was thick with emotion when I picked up. "Ben, can we talk?" she asked, barely able to hold back tears. "I need to explain." "Explain what, Sarah?" I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "What's left to explain?" She was quiet for a moment, the silence stretching between us. I made a mistake," she said finally. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've ruined everything. But, Ben, I love you. I still love you." I felt a flash of anger at her words, but more than that, I felt the weight of exhaustion. "Love?" I repeated, my voice laced with bitterness. "You think love excuses what you did? Love isn't about betrayal, Sarah. It's not about lies or sneaking around. It's about trust. And you destroyed that." "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But can't we try? For the kids? For us?" "No," I said firmly. "I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend that things can just go back to the way they were. You made your choice, Sarah, and now we both have to live with it." She let out a shaky breath, and I could tell she was crying. "Please, Ben," she pleaded. "I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy, I'll quit my job if that's what it takes. Just, don't end this. Don't throw everything away." "It wasn't me who threw it all away, Sarah," I replied, my voice cold. "You did that the minute you started lying to me. And now, you don't get to ask me to fix it." There was a long pause, and I could almost feel her desperation through the phone. But I didn't relent. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment I could finally set a boundary, take back the power she'd taken from me with her lies. When she spoke again, her voice was subdued, defeated. "I'll be by tomorrow to pick up a few things," she said quietly. "For now, I'll stay with my parents." "Fine," I replied, and hung up. The following morning, Sarah came by the house while the kids were at school. She looked different, tired, deflated, like the weight of her actions was finally catching up to her. I watched as she moved through the house, packing a few bags, her eyes lingering on the framed family photos and the small tokens of a life we'd built together. But I couldn't afford to feel sorry for her. This was her doing, and I was done shouldering her guilt. Before she left, she turned to me, her eyes pleading. "I'm sorry, Ben," she said, her voice thick with regret. "I never meant for any of this to happen." I crossed my arms, looking at her, feeling strangely detached. "Intentions don't matter, Sarah. Actions do. And your actions made it pretty clear where your priorities were." She nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes, but she didn't argue. "I'll do whatever I can to make things right for the kids," she said softly. "I don't want to make this harder for them." "Good," I replied. "Because they deserve better than this mess." She looked like she wanted to say more, to plead her case, but something in my expression must have told her it was pointless. She picked up her bags, lingering in the doorway for a moment as if waiting for me to stop her, to tell her everything would be okay. But I said nothing, and after a moment, she walked out, closing the door quietly behind her. As I watched her go, I felt a strange sense of freedom, like a weight had been lifted. For the first time in months, I could breathe without the constant ache of suspicion and doubt. The life I'd known was gone, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe this was my chance to build something real, something honest, even if I had to start from scratch. In the days that followed, I focused on my kids, trying to create some semblance of normalcy for them. I made their favorite dinners, helped them with homework, and tried to fill the house with laughter. It wasn't easy, and the emptiness Sarah had left was hard to ignore. But I knew I couldn't dwell on the past. One night, as I was tucking my daughter into bed, she looked up at me, her eyes wide with a question she hadn't dared to ask before. "Dad," she said softly, "is Mom coming back?" I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Your mom and we're going to be living in different houses now," I said gently. "But we both love you so much. Nothing will ever change that." She nodded, a small frown creasing her forehead, and I could see the worry in her eyes, the uncertainty of a child trying to make sense of an adult world. I leaned down and hugged her tightly, promising her that everything would be okay, even if I wasn't sure of it myself. After they were asleep, I sat in the quiet living room, feeling the weight of it all. This was my life now, a new reality I hadn't asked for, but one I would have to navigate for their sake and for my own. It would take time to rebuild, to find my footing again, but I knew one thing for certain, I wasn't looking back. Sarah's choices had destroyed the life we'd built, but I had a chance to create something new, something real. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into this new version of my life. I focused on the kids, my job, anything that would keep my mind from wandering back to Sarah. I'd filed the divorce papers, taken care of the finances, and started to make arrangements for a new routine, one that didn't include her. My goal was simple: rebuild. The kids seemed to be adapting well. They missed Sarah, of course, but they were resilient. We made new traditions, like Friday movie nights and weekend pancake breakfasts, little things to help them feel secure in this new normal. For the most part, it was working. The ache was there, but it was dulling, replaced by a cautious hope for the future. One evening, after a long day, I settled into the couch with a book, enjoying the rare quiet in the house. Just as I started to relax, the doorbell rang. I frowned, glancing at the clock. It was nearly 9. I wasn't expecting anyone, and Sarah had been picking the kids up from school directly, keeping her visits brief. When I opened the door, I was met with an unexpected face. A man I'd never seen before stood on my porch, dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie, a nervous expression crossing his face as he looked up at me. "Can I help you?" I asked, confused. He nodded, swallowing hard. Yeah, I hope so." He held out his hand, and I shook it, still baffled by his presence. "My name's Mitch." The name hit me like a punch, and I felt a cold wave wash over me. "Mitch?" I repeated, my voice strained. He nodded, shifting uncomfortably. "I know this is awkward," he said, glancing down. "And I don't blame you if you want me to leave right now. But I need to talk to you about Sarah." I took a step back, a mix of anger and curiosity swirling inside me. "You have 2 minutes," I said, crossing my arms. "Start talking." He took a deep breath. "Look, I didn't know she was married," he said quickly. "Not at first. She told me about you later, and by then, I was already in love with her. I know that sounds horrible, but I need you to know that I never would have gone after her if I'd known the truth." "Go on," I replied, keeping my tone cold. Mitch hesitated, looking past me into the house, then back at me. "She ended things with me a few weeks ago. She said she wanted to try to fix things with you, that she'd made a mistake. But, there's more to it than that." I felt my stomach churn as I watched him, his expression full of regret. "What do you mean, more to it?" He took a shaky breath. "Sarah, well, Sarah was only ever with me to make you jealous. The words hung in the air, and I stared at him, my mind struggling to comprehend. What are you talking about? I asked, anger creeping back into my voice. Mitch sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. It sounds crazy, but she told me everything. She said she thought you were drifting, that you were so focused on work and the kids that you barely even noticed her anymore. She wanted, I don't know, to feel desired, I guess. So she started talking to me. At first, she just wanted to talk, someone who wasn't you. He paused, gauging my reaction, but I said nothing, letting him continue. It got more intense, and eventually, she told me she was married. But by then, I didn't want to let her go, he said, his voice full of regret. I thought I was enough for her. I thought she wanted to leave you. But it was all an act, I guess. The moment she told you about us, she started pulling away from me. Mitch's words felt surreal, like I was watching a twisted scene in a movie I couldn't look away from. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice strained. He looked down, shame coloring his face. Because I wanted you to know the truth. And because, there's one more thing. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small slip of paper, his hand shaking slightly. This is her therapist's information. She told me she was going to start seeing someone to figure things out. But I'm starting to think she's been in over her head for a long time. I took the paper from him, staring at the name and number. Part of me wanted to rip it up, toss it back in his face. But the other part, the part that had spent sleepless nights trying to understand why she'd done this, held on to it. I thanked Mitch curtly and closed the door, the paper still clenched in my hand. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Mitch's words rattled around in my mind, filling in gaps I hadn't even realized were there. All this time, I'd thought Sarah was driven by selfishness, a desire to escape the life we'd built. But what if there had been something more? Something that even she hadn't fully understood? The next day, curiosity got the better of me, and I dialed the number on the slip of paper. The therapist, Dr. Taylor, was polite but cautious, explaining that she couldn't disclose details about Sarah's treatment. Still, I asked her about some general things, about how someone who felt unseen might act, about how they might spiral if they felt trapped. Dr. Taylor listened carefully, her tone gentle. Everyone copes differently, she said. But if your wife feels that way, she may be struggling with unresolved issues. These things are complex, layered. But it doesn't justify hurting others. Thank you, I said, feeling a strange sense of relief, even if I didn't fully understand why. 2 days later, Sarah called me, sounding unusually calm. Ben, can we talk? In person? I agreed, meeting her at a quiet coffee shop. She looked tired, worn down, but there was something else in her eyes, a clarity that hadn't been there before. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. Seeing a therapist, trying to make sense of, well, everything. I nodded, letting her speak. What I did was wrong, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know that it wasn't about you. It was about me. I felt like I was losing myself, like I didn't matter anymore. I thought I could fix it by doing something drastic. Something to force you to see me. She looked up, her eyes pleading. I was wrong. I know that now. And I'm sorry. A silence fell between us, and I felt a strange, bittersweet understanding settle over me. I didn't forgive her, not completely. But for the first time, I understood. Sarah's betrayal hadn't been about love or even lust, it had been about fear, insecurity, the feeling that she'd lost her place in the world. I appreciate you telling me this, I said finally, feeling a weight lift from my chest. But we still can't go back, Sarah. I can't forget everything that's happened. For the kid's sake, I'll try to be civil, to co-parent. But that's all I can offer. She nodded, a single tear sliding down her cheek. I understand, she whispered. Thank you. As I walked away from the coffee shop, I felt a strange sense of closure, like I'd finally stepped out from under the shadow of her betrayal. Maybe I'd never understand everything, but I didn't need to. I had my kids, my peace, and a future that, for the first time, felt entirely my own. As I drove home, I realized something. In letting go of Sarah, I'd freed myself from the pain, the anger, the bitterness. And with that freedom, I found something even more surprising: hope.